Arnold Schwarzenegger once tricked Sylvester Stallone into making one of the worst movies of all time. On purpose, he found a terrible script, pretended he wanted it, and let word leak to Stallone, who grabbed the part just to beat him. Arnold later admitted it. 100% true. That's who Stallone was in the 90s, so obsessed with being the biggest star alive that he nearly stopped being one. He went from Rambo to a talking mom comedy, to gaining 40 pounds for scale, and clawed his way back to something better. 10 movies, worst to best. Let's go. 10. Stop, or My Mom Will Shoot, 1992. We already know how he got here, so let's talk about what he got. Stallone plays an LA cop whose tiny, meddling mother, Estelle Getty, from The Golden Girls, flies out to visit, witnesses a murder, and refuses to leave. Comedy ensues. Or, well, comedy is attempted. Here's what makes it the bottom of the list, and it's not just that it's bad, it's that Stallone knew. He said it flat out, one of the worst films in the universe, in his words. He walked in with his eyes open purely because he couldn't stand the thought of Arnold getting a laugh he didn't. That's the tragedy of this whole decade in one dumb buddy comedy. A titanically talented guy making a decision out of pure competitive spite. And the cruelest part? Arnold, the man who set the trap, never had to lift a finger. He just whispered a rumor and let Stallone's ego do the rest. If you want a monument to the Sly-versus-Arnold arms race, it's right here, wearing a police uniform, getting nagged by a golden girl. It's rock bottom, and I promise you, from here, we only climb. 9. Rocky V, 1990. This hurts in a completely different way, because this isn't a movie he made out of spite. It's a movie he made out of love, and it still went wrong. Rocky V opens the decade by tearing down the myth. Brain damage from the ring forces Rocky into retirement. He's broke, wiped out by a crooked accountant, and instead of a triumphant title fight, the whole thing ends in a street brawl. Rocky against his own protege, a hungry young fighter named Tommy Gunn, played by real-life heavyweight contender Tommy Morrison. Here's a piece of trivia that tells you how dark they were willing to go. In the original script, Rocky dies in that final fight, in Adrian's arms, on the pavement. They pulled it back during production. It made $120 million worldwide, so it wasn't a bomb, but it was easily the lowest point the franchise had ever hit, about a third of what Rocky IV pulled in. And Stallone himself, when asked to rate it years later, he gave it a 1, the lowest of anything in his career. This is the sound of a legend fumbling the thing he loved most. We open on the stumble. 8. Oscar, 1991. Number 8 is the other comedy, the swing nobody remembers he took. Oscar is a 1930s gangster farce directed by John Landis, the man behind Animal House and Trading Places. Stallone plays a mobster trying to go straight, trapped in a single mansion over one chaotic morning of mistaken identities, misplaced suitcases, and slamming doors. And here's the thing. It's not the disaster Stop is. It's an honest attempt at classic screwball comedy, and Stallone is genuinely game, doing rapid-fire dialogue and door farce timing. It just doesn't fit him. Audiences in 1991 did not pay to watch Rambo do a Marx Brothers routine, and it landed with a thud. But keep the pattern in mind because it's the whole video. Twice in 2 years, Stallone tried to escape the muscle and reinvent himself as a comic actor. Twice, it blew up. He was desperate to be seen as more, and the more he reached, the harder he fell. Hold that thought. It pays off big at number 1. 7. Judge Dredd, 1995. The one movie fans will never forgive. Judge Dredd, the adaptation of the legendary British comic, should have been a slam dunk. A grim future, a faceless lawman who's judge, jury, and executioner, and a star built like a tank. I am the law. And then Stallone took the helmet off. If you don't know the comics, here's why that's a scandal. In the source material, Dredd never removes his helmet. Ever. The anonymity is the whole point. He's not a man, he's the law itself, a faceless machine of justice. Stallone spends most of the movie bare-faced, because of course he does. You don't pay Sylvester Stallone and hide his face. The hardcore fans revolted. Rob Schneider tags along as comic relief. Armand Assante chews the scenery. It cost $90 million and made about $113 worldwide. Soft, especially with a disappointing $34 million at home, buried alive in the summer of Batman Forever and Apollo 13. Stallone himself has since called it one of the biggest mistakes of his career, and yet it's got a real cult now and a genuinely stunning production design, a gorgeous, misjudged mess. 6. Daylight, 1996. This is the most competent movie nobody thinks about. Daylight is a disaster picture. A tunnel under the Hudson River collapses, trapping a handful of survivors, and Stallone is the disgraced ex-emergency services chief who climbs into the wreckage to get them out. And honestly, it works, on its own modest terms. It's tense, it's practical. Stallone does the wounded hero thing he does well, wading through fire and floodwater to save strangers. There's a sincerity to it, but it's the last gasp of a very specific idea. Stallone as pure, old-fashioned spectacle, the lone muscle against the collapsing world. The problem was, the world had moved on. By 1996, that formula was tired, and Daylight came and went without leaving a mark. It's the calm before the pivot. The last time he tried to be exactly what he'd always been, right before he figured out he needed to become something else. Perfectly fine. Utterly forgotten. 5. Assassins, 1995. A pretty good movie hiding inside a glum one, and it comes with a wild footnote. Assassins is a hitman thriller. Stallone as an aging contract killer who wants out, hunted by a younger, hungrier assassin played by Antonio Banderas, with Julianne Moore caught in the middle. Directed by Richard Donner, the man who made Superman and Lethal Weapon. Here's the footnote. The screenplay was written by two unknowns named the Wachowskis. Yes, those Wachowskis. 4 years before they made The Matrix and changed action cinema forever. This was one of their first big breaks, but their script got heavily rewritten, and they hated the result so much they tried to have their names removed from the movie. The Writers Guild said no, so their name is on it, whether they like it or not. The film itself is moody, melancholy, and slower than audiences wanted. It lost money, grossing $83 million on a $50 million budget. But there's a real mournful performance underneath it. It's Stallone quietly, again, trying to act. 4. The Specialist, 1994. Number 4 is where we stop pretending quality and box office are the same thing. Because The Specialist is, by the critics' math, one of the worst reviewed movies of his career, a 10% on Rotten Tomatoes. And it made a fortune. Stallone plays an explosives expert lured back into the game by Sharon Stone at the absolute white-hot peak of her post-Basic Instinct fame to take down a Miami crime family. James Woods is the unhinged villain, clearly having the time of his life. It is pure, glossy, ridiculous 90s pulp, an infamously overheated romance, bombs going off on cue, everyone taking it far too seriously, and people lined up. It pulled in $170 million worldwide. Let that land for a second. Savaged by every critic alive, and one of the biggest hits of Stallone's entire decade. That's the paradox of a real movie star. Even when the movie's bad, even when he knows it's bad, the audience shows up for the name on the poster. It's a guilty pleasure that printed money. 3. Demolition Man, 1993. Top 3. Now we're cooking. Demolition Man is the one that keeps getting better with age. A satire so sharp it basically predicted the world we actually live in. Stallone is John Spartan, a wrecking ball cop frozen in 1996 and thawed out in 2032 to hunt an escaped psychopath. Simon Phoenix, played by a gleeful bleach-blonde Wesley Snipes, who is electric in this. And the future they wake up in is the joke that never stops giving. A sanitized, sterilized society where all restaurants are now Taco Bell because Taco Bell won the franchise wars. Where profanity earns you an automatic fine. Where nobody knows how to use the mysterious 3 seashells in the bathroom. A gag they never explain and never needed to. 2 more things for the collectors. In Europe, where Taco Bell didn't exist yet, they digitally swapped every reference to Pizza Hut in post-production. And there's a throwaway line that, in 1993, was a punchline about the rivalry we keep coming back to. In this future, Arnold Schwarzenegger became president of the United States. Even inside his own movie, Stallone couldn't escape the guy. A young Sandra Bullock, a snarling Dennis Leary. It's smarter than it has any right to be, and it has aged into a genuine classic. Number 3. And I already hear some of you screaming this should be number 1. 2. Cliffhanger, 1993. A true comeback. The one that saved him. After Rocky V, after Oscar, after the mom with a gun humiliation, Stallone's career was genuinely on the ropes. And then he strapped in on a mountain. Cliffhanger is Stallone as a mountain rescue climber, haunted by a death he couldn't prevent, dragged back into the Rockies when a gang of thieves, led by a purring, magnificent John Lithgow, loses a fortune in the peaks and needs a local to find it. That opening sequence, the rescue that goes wrong high above the canyon, still makes people grab the armrest 30 years later. Directed by Rennie Harlin, co-written by Stallone himself. And it worked. $255 million worldwide, the 7th biggest movie of 1993, 11 straight weeks at #1 in Japan. In one clean, vertical shot, Stallone reminded the entire planet that when he stopped trying to be funny and just committed, leaping across chasms, freezing, bleeding, nobody did the wounded action hero better. This is the movie that bought him the freedom to make #1. The peak of the mountain, literally and figuratively. 1. Copland, 1997. The smallest, quietest, lowest-grossing movie on this entire list. Here's the case, and it's the whole reason we made this video. By 1997, Stallone had proven he could open a giant action picture, sell a ridiculous romance, headline a franchise. The one thing nobody believed he could do, the thing 2 failed comedies suggested he couldn't, was actually act. So he did something no movie star does. He gained 40 pounds. He deliberately made himself soft, slow, ordinary. And he took Union Scale, a tiny fraction of his usual paycheck, for the privilege of standing in the same frame as Robert De Niro, Harvey Keitel, and Ray Liotta. He plays Freddie Heflin, a half-deaf, overlooked small-town sheriff in a New Jersey suburb full of corrupt New York City cops. A soft man in a hard world, watching, doing nothing, until he finally can't anymore. There's no roundhouse kick, no one-liner, just a sad, decent man finding his spine. And Stallone is quietly devastating in it. It made $64 million, a rounding error next to The Specialist or Cliffhanger. He didn't do it for money, and he didn't get money. He did it to answer the question that had haunted the whole decade. And the answer was yes, he could act. He always could. He'd just spent 7 years too busy proving he was the biggest to prove he was the best. Fight me below. Copland or Cliffhanger? Or are you one of the Demolition Man people ready to riot? I want to hear it. So look at the shape of it. We opened on Rocky V, a legend fumbling the thing he loved, taking a comedy role out of spite because he couldn't stand losing to Arnold. And we close on Copland, the same man gaining 40 pounds and working for scale, chasing something money couldn't buy. That's the 90s for Sylvester Stallone, not a decline. A reinvention, the hard way, with 2 humiliating comedies and a helmetless Judge Dredd, and a lot of bruised pride along the road. He spent the 80s as the biggest star alive, spent the 90s nearly losing himself trying to stay there, and came out the other side an actual actor. The elder statesman run that followed, the one that eventually won him an Oscar nomination decades later. It all starts here, on a quiet New Jersey street, with a sad sheriff and 40 extra pounds. He didn't get beaten by the decade. He used it to become someone new. So tell me down below, what's the Stallone movie you'd fight me to move up this list? And be honest, did you rent Stop or My Mom Will Shoot on Purpose? That's it from the booth. The reels rewound, the projectors cooling, and somewhere Arnold Schwarzenegger is still laughing about that phone call. This has been Victor at Picture Recall.